It's Sunday night. Welcome to another edition of the Dean Legge Show. Georgia, number 3, Georgia with a 63-17 win over Missouri State. The Bulldogs racking up more passing yards last night or yesterday afternoon than running yards. That's the first time that's happened since, I think, the Sugar Bowl. And Georgia and company ending up with 561 total yards to Murray State's 284. Murray State actually threw the ball okay, but they sure didn't run it. They only wound up with 23 total rushing yards, so that was not ideal. So Georgia got done what it wanted to do. They got off the field, not giving up 300 yards. There's a lot when you look at the game that went well for Georgia. You would like to see them come out of the gate a little quicker, a little better, but it's hard to complain a lot about a 63-17 win. I mean, that could have been worse, honestly, in some instances. Georgia exploded in the second quarter after a bit of a sloppy first quarter. Anytime you're tied with an FCS opponent 7-7 after 15 minutes, it's not an ideal first quarter, but 35 points in the second quarter with Brian Herrien a 2-yard run. J.R. Reed a scoop and score. DeAndre Swift for a 10-yard touchdown. George Pickens, 15-yard pass from Jake. And then Zamir with his first touchdown, a 6-yard run. Really getting everybody on the board that wanted to get on the board, I guess. At the end of the day, Demetrius scored one more time in the third quarter. And then Don Blaylock with a touchdown. And then Stetson Bennett with the bootleg action to get on the board as well, 63-17. I don't think... and the other thing was that Georgia started so fast, it felt like they might really make it an ugly affair from the get-go. But Preston Rice, for the quarterback from Murray, played pretty well. Go back and watch the game. He did not play poorly. I mean, 20 of 25, no interceptions, 216 yards. He was sacked 5 times. The so-called havoc rate was at a pretty high rate yesterday. I mean, he had 5 sacks, scoop and score. I'm trying to think of tip passes. I'm not sure I saw a lot of those, but tackles for losses, that's another metric that is being kept in the football offices. So in terms of the Georgia defense played pretty well. And by the way, Murray State, Georgia, the way I'm trying to think of teams that will throw it. There will be teams that throw it more than 33 times. I said there was no interceptions. There was an interception for Murray, but it wasn't their starting quarterback. I believe it was the backup. Yes. They played 3 quarterbacks that game, just like Georgia did. By the way, too, Stetson with a pick 6, Jake Fromm 10 of 11, and then Stetson 9 of 13. I thought besides the pick, a lot of people haven't seen Stetson throw the ball. He really can spin the ball, no doubt about it. All right, who was the dog post player of the game? This was actually not the easiest thing to come up with, but he wound up with 4 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown was a nice grab, a 43-yard long ball from Jake Fromm. That was George Pickens from Alabama. He really played well yesterday. Good blocking on the DeAndre Swift touchdown. George Pickens is coming to his own. All the stuff we've been talking about, now you're starting to see it. And it's not surprising to people on the team. Let's listen to Jake talk about George Pickens, and then we'll follow that up with Kirby.
Man, honestly, the go ball, I thought I threw it pretty well, and he had to go and dive for it. I'm like, man, I didn't think I overthrew it, even though I put that much juice on it. And then we go to the corner route that he had for the touchdown. I'm like, I thought I overthrew that ball, and then he made that one look easy. So I'm still trying to figure out, what the heck's going on with my arm. Like, wasn't quite feeling right. But man, he did awesome today. He did some really good things. Need to clean up a little bit of the penalty stuff and some of the detail on the routes. But he's an awesome kid. He's doing a great job for us.
Yeah, George has stepped up and he's starting to become an overall player, meaning probably the most impressive thing he did today was a block on DeAndre Swift's long run. He did a great job going down and digging the safety out, and it sprung Swift. And when you can do that as a freshman, that's more impressive to me than diving and catching the ball. He's grown as a player. He's got to learn to control his emotions a little bit. He's very emotional. He's a passionate player. I don't ever want to take that away from him because I think that is what makes him who he is. But he's got to be smart and play within our system and understand that just because you make a play, you can't talk to the opponent.
So really a nice day for George Pickens. He wasn't the only one, but he is one of these younger guys. I mean, we start talking about him, Nolan, Trayvon, Zamir, who's not as young as those guys are. Even Cade Mays, guys like that who are only in their 16th game of playing or fewer games of playing. So Georgia with not a youth-led team, but certainly they're not waiting around for the older guys anymore, that's for sure. Let's listen to Kirby talk about his team's performance on Saturday.
Yeah, we had busted coverage on defense. They made a really good throw and catch. Guy made a heck of a catch, good throw. We were in man coverage, and we didn't have a middle field safety. So when you don't have a middle field safety and they catch it, they're going to run for the distance. And then we had a couple slow series there on offense. Got beat on a twist, ended up giving up a sack. And guys persevered, kept playing hard. And, you go into these games knowing that you want to score every play and you think you should score every drive and that you should hold them to 0 yards, and they got good players too. So got to give them some credit, and our kids kept playing, and that's kind of what our mantra is. We're going to keep playing and try to break the other team's wheel.
So the Bulldogs will get back at it this week. Arkansas State, that is a noon kick. It will be on ESPN2, I've been told. I don't know if that's been announced yet. But one thing that Georgia will be itching to figure out and have happen here soon is when will Isaiah Wilson return? That'll be something that people start talking about over time. But in the meantime, Cade Mays got another start on Saturday. This is Kirby talking about what he feels like Cade did so well. And also pay attention to the part where he talks about how Cade Mays plays with a lot of energy.
He's very valuable. His strength is his diversity. He can play a lot of positions. He's very smart. He practices all those positions. And what I love about Cade is regardless of what position he's at, he has fire in his belly. Cade is a competitor. Cade loves to win. When we score a touchdown, Cade's the first guy to celebrate with a back, and he blocks downfield, and he practices that way. So I love the way he plays the game because he plays the game of football the right way.
When you're on the sideline like I am, you get the ability to hear and see a lot of things that, people who aren't on the sideline, and even you got to be at the right place at the right time, get to hear. And Cade Mays was visibly upset when Georgia gave up the pick six. Now, that's completely on Stetson, but that came with... that came about 5 minutes into the second half and made the score, 42-14. And the person who was the most pissed off, and it was not close, was Cade Mays. And he was visibly angry or whatever. We talked about this last night on Riding Home. If you don't subscribe to us on YouTube, you should do that right now. There's a little button down below. If you're listening to us on iTunes, give us a good review. If you're watching on Facebook and or Instagram, we appreciate you being there. If you're not on our dog post, dawgpost.com, dogpost.com, dawgpost.com. Go there right now. Thousands of your friends are there waiting to talk to you and be friends with you, etc. I thought the offensive line for the Dogs played pretty well yesterday. And, one reason I'm not starting to talk about Notre Dame yet is we're so far away from that game still. You're 13 days away from it at this point. Notre Dame's played once. At first blush, I didn't think Notre Dame played so hot against Louisville, but they settled into it and played okay. I do wonder if Notre Dame is the type of team that can stick with Georgia for 4 quarters. I wonder if there's a lot of teams that can stick with Georgia for 4 quarters. And the other thing, as Georgia, I tell you what, we're going to talk about a couple of things first, and then I'll get into my longer rant. One thing that happened yesterday, it's not happened in a while. Yesterday against Murray State was the first time Georgia scored a defensive touchdown since the Missouri game last year when Tyson Campbell picked up a fumble, and returned it. I think it was 60-something yards, maybe 70 yards for a touchdown. And Missouri was really deflated after that. That was when some of these younger guys like Cade Mays were making really sort of their first starts and meaningful snaps. So this is what J.R. Reed had to say. Let me actually go to Kirby talking about why that will be so well received this coming week when the team gets together.
Yeah, we always show every defensive score in the SEC on the team score on defense. We show it every day, every Tuesday or Wednesday. I forget what day it is in our defensive meeting. So the players love it because they want to be on that reel. Every defensive player's dreams to score. So when 6 SEC teams score on defense, we get to watch them, and they're always trying to be on that reel. So they'll be fired up because they get to be on that reel this week. And we preach it all the time that when you get an interception or a fumble recovery, we want to score. We want to score on defense, and it's like 60 or 70% of the games you win when you score on defense. So if you can do that, you can be pretty successful.
It's when you score non-offensive touchdowns, obviously the game changes dramatically because offensive players are not defenders. They're not used to defending. They're not used to tackling. And on top of that, you're just stealing a possession. It's like a free touchdown almost. And you can only give away so many free touchdowns. Obviously, in a game against someone like Murray State, getting the last time Georgia scored screwed up with Missouri put in there. When you start thinking about scoring non-offensive touchdowns, whether it's on special teams, defense, that's how better teams absolutely maul teams that aren't as good as them. And that's how teams that are not as good stay in games. When you looked around yesterday watching college football, there was a lot of sloppy play on special teams from teams like certainly it seems like it pops up a fair amount in the ACC. There were some not great performances yesterday in college football globally. And it feels to me like right now we've got about 6 teams who legitimately could win the national championship. And yesterday, LSU's win is the best win of the season so far. Now, Texas sometimes seems like they're a lot better than they really are. And with that win last night, LSU, there's a lot of things that are happening nationally that is not good for teams not in the SEC. I mean, Clemson basically, I talk about Clemson plenty. I have family ties because of my wife. And I talk about Clemson a lot. Clemson's not going to have any trouble from here on out. They may lose because that's what they do sometimes in conference play. And no matter what, as bad as the ACC is, it's still the conference you play in, so you're more likely to lose those games than you are other games. So Clemson, really, there's just no one in their way. They're not playing a legitimate foe the rest of the way. There's no one on their schedule right now that's ranked. And I don't know if they play North Carolina and Virginia. The ACC's divisions are still beyond me. I have to say there's no East and West. At least Missouri. I mean, Missouri is stupid, but that's just one stupidity. And the ACC, you can't. I don't know what's Atlantic and what's coastal, and I don't know. So I don't think there's anything in Clemson's way. I mean, Syracuse is not good. Anyone losing to Maryland like that is not good. So I do think that LSU had the best win. And Texas A&M, from Johnny Manziel until now, just that era of football, big football in the Lone Star State. We've heard a lot about Texas A&M. When was their last big win? When was their last win that people were like, whoa, Alabama in 2012? That's not to shit all over A&M. I mean, they could totally get rolling here soon. But was it really a surprise that they went halfway across the country and lost to the number 1 team in the country? I mean, it's not really that surprising. They weren't better than Clemson. They're still developing as a program. Clemson didn't look unbeatable by any stretch, and I think that's what's kind of stupid after a while is you develop these narratives nationally that Alabama can't lose until Clemson kicked their teeth in. Now Clemson's won 17 games in a row, and now they can't lose. Well, I mean, I've seen Clemson live now. They got issues too. And Trevor is going to start playing better, but he's not played great so far. It's been really good at times. Sometimes it's been mediocre, particularly for him, someone of his talent. You got the LSU game. You got LSU with their win over Texas. The only issue with that, I mean, LSU looks good. The only issue is can you really take Texas seriously? It's great that they beat Georgia, and they did. They manhandled them that night. But Isn't this kind of what Texas does now? I mean, they have one really great game they play a season. Sometimes it's against Oklahoma, but it's hard to know if you can trust Texas. That's what I'm trying to say. I think they're a legit top 15 team, top 10 team, but are they a national championship contender? Not after last night. I mean, they got a ways to go to get back into it. Ohio State's offense looks really good. Justin holds the ball a little bit too long for me at times, but Michigan looks bad. They're not in my top 6 group, but the top 6 group is as follows, and in no particular order: Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma. I'm not overwhelmingly trusting of Oklahoma either. I'm not overwhelmingly trusting of Jalen Hurts. But in that group of 6, 3 of whom are in the SEC, you're in real trouble in these conferences. The Pac-12 it's basically done, because with last night's loss, 2019 loss for Washington to Cal, you're going to need USC to run the table, probably with maybe as a one-loss team. Maybe UW could rally and become that, but they still got to deal with Oregon, who already has a loss to Auburn. No, I'm not including Auburn in that top 6. No, I'm not including Florida in that top 6. No, I'm not including Michigan in that top 6. Tulane can't be a team you struggle with at home. That's what happened with Auburn. Florida, they got to play better. I mean, it's just not playing. I mean, Miami has 2 losses now. They're 0-2. Tennessee's not even worth discussion of. They're not in the same universe as Miami in terms of 0-2 teams. But those 6 teams all have, solid looking situations, but Alabama's not played anybody. Georgia's not played anyone of consequence. Oklahoma certainly has not played anybody. And Ohio State's really not played anybody. If you want to say Ohio State and Georgia have both played somewhat similar teams in Vanderbilt and Cincinnati, I will give you that. And maybe Duke for Alabama, but I don't even, So there's been times where those groups have, so Clemson has been tested and won a game they should have won, but they did. But LSU, I think, has the best win. They have a road top 10 win over a name brand school. Maybe they're really legit this year. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Okay. The same thing. Georgia at least has won their conference this decade. Georgia has gotten to the college football playoff. Georgia's played for the national championship. We can't say any of those things about Texas right now. And this thing still goes through Oklahoma. And if someone wants to say Texas won the Big 12 this decade, I don't remember that. So that's how irrelevant they've been in my time. Maybe they did in 2010, but it's been a long time since Texas is back. This whole routine. The thing goes through Oklahoma, and now Texas is going to have to beat Oklahoma twice, which I'm sure they've never done in history because they don't ever play twice. But they couldn't do it last year, and then you've got teams that are kind of like on the edge who are trying to save themselves. Florida, Auburn, Wisconsin, people like that. I mean, the Big Ten doesn't look great. It looks like Ohio State, everybody else, maybe Wisconsin. There's no excuse for an offense that's got a player with the caliber of playmaking ability of Shea Patterson and just players to struggle with a service academy and to go into overtime with service academy. It was unacceptable last year at Oklahoma. It's not. It's even worse almost this year at Michigan because they had the whole summer to prepare for the defensively for what Army had. I don't know. But if I were to rank it right this second, I would say probably Clemson 1, LSU 2, Alabama 3, Georgia 4, probably Ohio State, and then Oklahoma. But I think everybody 1 through 6, you really could juggle them. I don't see why you would move Clemson out of the way or Alabama out of the way or Georgia out of the way. I'm just saying by eye test, that's what it looks like. I mean, when you're scoring almost 50 points against a legitimate team, even though we're at a Big 12 school, you have to monitor that. So LSU looks good. Can they beat Alabama? Same question for them as everybody else in college football. If you can't beat Alabama, we're just talking. So, and then the other thing is how many SEC schools are going to get into this playoff? Right now, it's looking like 2. It's looking like 2 for sure. Could 3 ever get in? I just don't see that ever happening. I mean, could you have a scenario where, the Big 12 just becomes a 2-loss league. The Pac-12 is not usable. The Big 10, Wisconsin wins it with 2 losses. And then you just look around, the ACC is going to have Clemson. And then if 3 of your top 4 teams are in the SEC, which they might be right this second, what are the rules? We don't know what the rules are. That was proven last year. The rules one year are different than the rules from the next. We don't know what the rules are this year. So we'll see, and we got a long way to go. Georgia has its opportunity to really open eyes in 2 weeks against Notre Dame. Now, yeah, I'm not talking about Arkansas State. If you can't beat Arkansas State, and by the way, if you feel like I'm too harsh or, this is about winning national championships. This isn't about beating Georgia Tech at the end of the year. So if you find my commentary a little too rough around the edges, maybe this isn't the place for you. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But this isn't about playing Tech at the end of the year and getting bragging rights. This is about beating Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, LSU. I'm not judging Georgia against Florida or, Washington or teams that, they're better than. So this is about, do they look good all the time? No. And they're not going to. But let's live in reality a little bit here. The bar has been raised. They're just building an $80 million football facility to go next to the $30 million facility. And by my rough math, that's a little bit over $110 million. I'm not going to sit here and talk about a program that just spent $110 million over the last 4 years, talking about if they look good, against Murray State. They should look good against Murray State, period. This thing has been elevated. No, they're not always going to look good. But the point of Dog Post is to tell the truth as we see it at that moment. They did not play well in the first quarter. It was 7-all with Murray State. Then they absolutely killed them. And that's what the truth was at that moment. So don't get feelings hurt, okay? That's not what this is. If if it's a little bit too aggressive for you, there's other places that can tell you how great Georgia is. You can go be a fan, shake your pom-pom and all that. That's not what Dog Post is. Okay, Dog Post is about telling you the truth as we see it. Okay? It's not always pretty out there. But we try to give you reality. And we try to do that every night. On Riding Home, on the on the website, dawgpost.com, which is where I expect everyone to go right now. Dean Legge wrapping up the Dean Legge Show for Sunday night. We will see you over on the website, dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. We'll see you right now.